Greetings everybody. I'm here to do another video. A fine Monday morning here at the sea. The beach, the rolling waves look so beautiful. I trust you well and that you're coping with what's on your plate today. I want to talk about an anomaly. I've been to Japan recently, and in that country that is described as a non-Christian country, you see all the Christian values being exercised there. And that's an anomaly for me, coming from the West. You know, Japan is seen as very orderly, clean, and serene and calm. Its citizens seem to be busy with what they're doing in a very orderly fashion. Everybody seems to have a job, and they know what they're doing and they know where they're going. And the streets are clean. Everything is orderly done there. And when you compare that to the countries in the West, in my country, for instance, when you look around at the number of, the amount of dirt and litter and dumping and so forth, even in this city where I live, the city spends millions in cleanups from people who just dump along the roadside or on fields. But when you're in Japan, even in a big city like Tokyo or Kyoto or even Osaka, you hardly see any litter around. The streets are cleaned. There's hardly any mess around, etc. And everything's orderly and serene and so on. Even in the streets in the city, where it's busy and bustling, it's calm and serene. Nobody's hooting and tooting on their hooters as you'd get in some of the cities in the West. How is that possible? How is it possible? I want to present a few ideas here, talking about possibly, the reason why. Christians, for instance, talk about Christian values and so forth, but here in the West, many of the cities don't seem to show that Christian values by what they do. The violence, the gangsterism, the mess, and so forth. Whereas in the East, where they don't brag about the values, they just carry it out. Now, so it's a form of a sickness, I think, here in the West. When I look around at the amount of littering and dumping that's taking place. I was even gawking at your dirt removal trucks in Japan, in Tokyo and so forth, Kyoto. They are actually shining clean. You gawk at it because how is it possible that there's a dirt truck supposedly working to remove dirt from the bins and so forth is so pristine clean? It's shining, in fact. And we used to seeing our dirt trucks are quite messy and dirty, as they're busy with removing dirt. Even the trucks in construction, you look at it and you think, okay, it's transporting rubble or rocks and so on, but the downright truck is actually clean, and you see the dirt in the back of the truck, nicely, neatly piled up there, but there's no dust and dirt on the truck itself. So how is this possible? One of the things that I discovered in my studies, which I want to just share with you now. My postgraduate degree, I decided to study education, post Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Education. And this is a degree that's not a teaching degree. It's actually a postgraduate degree where you do subjects like empirical education, special empirical education, didactics, pedagogics, history of education, and comparative education. And I learned such a lot in that degree And for instance, comparative education, which I performed the best out of all those subjects, I decided to do my master's in comparative education. Now, comparative education, you compare systems of education in various countries. And so in my master's, I decided to compare our South African education system to a developed country's education system and an underdeveloped education system or underdeveloped country. And I chose Nigeria as the underdeveloped country, and I chose Germany as the developed country. And to cut a long story short, at the end of my studies, when you come to your findings, I found out that the reason why Germany, for instance, as a developed country, is so developed and its education system is quite developed, etc. It's because they start so early in their education. The kindergarten, I think that's where we get the term kindergarten, is actually a German word. The early childhood development is excellent. They engage a child from very early with stimulation in education, and with the result, the German child goes through the education system successfully and achieves success at the end of it, and they become valuable and resourceful and creative citizens in their society. The problem with the underdeveloped country I chose, for instance, is that they did not engage with early childhood development in a similar manner, and they made the cardinal error, for instance, of saying they're going to have universal primary education, but without making provision for secondary education. So with the result is, after so many hundreds of thousands of children that go through the primary school system come to high school and they want to get secondary education, but there's not enough schools because the state did not provide. So that system, for instance, had that failing. But to come back to the story of this anomaly, the Japanese child in the Japanese school system doesn't have tests and exams well into their schooling. In fact, they only get tests and exams post grade 3 level. So hence the reason they do so well, because the first years of their education, they are given civics, they're given discipline, they're given things that's to do with values in society and civics, etc. With the result is they are well prepared when they are going to embark on their full academic program. And the system of education is successful in the sense that the children come out with good values, sturdy values of and civics and discipline and so forth. In fact, they don't have janitors or cleaners in their schools in the early stages, like up to grade 3. The children actually are the cleaners. They clean their own classrooms, their own school, etc. And through that, they learn this value of keeping things clean. And the world can just observe. There was testimony of this worldview of the Japanese, that when they played their match in the World Cup, after the match, they went and they cleaned up the whole stands, and the world were marveling at about that. But that is what is actually ingrained in them, is cleanliness. And my country is very, very, very far behind in terms of that, because they neglect in the school system. This is where our school system is failing. that we don't make provision for proper and full childhood development in the early stages. You know, when I graduated, and I was so impressed with my findings and my dissertation, that I approached some news outlets and approached the journalists, and I was shocked to see that they were not sort of impressed at what I was saying in my proposal to them to publish a summary of my findings. The argument was even so, why must you get special attention? There's so many other master's degrees that have come out, etc. So I was, the wind was out of my sails because I was so enthusiastic about this. I thought I found the solution, and this is several years ago now that I graduated with my master's degree. So that's one aspect of what I wanted to share with you. Another part of what I observed in the Japanese society is that the history, still impacts on their makeup, their mindset. They got a very rich history. And if you think back, when you look at the museums and the information about the samurai society, then that discipline, that order still survived throughout the centuries. There's no longer samurais and that type of thing, but that kind of value of respect, that kind of value of hierarchy, that kind of value of discipline emerges from far back in their culture and their history. The shoguns that ruled Japan centuries ago, all of these things have survived through the centuries. Unfortunately, the West has also impacted on Japan in a negative way, because just to share this point, as a tourist, everything is clean and orderly and whatever, and wherever you do see at least some litter, who is responsible? The tourists from the West. They're responsible near the hotels or with tourist centers. They are actually disturbing the beautiful scenery and calm and serenity of Japan with their loudness and their litter, etc. So that's the one side of what I wanted to share with you, but there's another side. In my previous video, I talked about Acts 2, verse 4, where prophecy was given, even in Acts 2, of the New Testament, where there's reference to that God will give His spirit of prophecy to His people, to the young and the old, through dreams and visions, etc. And they will dream and envision and they will prophesy. And I'm one of those people who believe we are in the end times. So let me just read the scripture for you. And I just want to show something related to what I'm talking about Japan. In Acts 2, verse 4, it says, no, it's not 4, it's verse 17. Verse 17, my apologies. It's Acts 2, verse 17. It says, in the last days, God says, I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your young men will see visions. Your old men will dream dreams. Now, this is reference to the fact that in the end times, which we are in now, at the present time, God is going to pour out His Spirit on people, receptive people to God's messages. And people will dream dreams and they'll have visions and so forth, and it'll be not only the old, but it'll be the young and the old that will see this type of thing. Now, I did express in my previous video that there have been prophecies made, visions seen by various individuals, and again, I'm not going to mention names and I'm not going to give references. All I'm just going to say is it's social media. Some people don't want to research. I'll say research, go and read and go and find out and try to see what I'm trying to say, but I'm not going to take my time to talk about who made the visions and who had the dreams. But safe to say that Japan, as wonderful and developed as it is, and I must say it's far in advance to many countries, its transport system, etc., its education system, its every way, method and way that they do things, it's leagues ahead of other countries and peoples. But as much as it's developed, it's actually due to get a huge earthquakes. Now, while I was there in June, there was an earthquake that I experienced, a 5.1, 5.2 in the area just away from Tokyo, and I was in Tokyo at the time, and I experienced that earthquake, and it just reminded me of the prophecies made in the Bible about earthquakes increasing in various places according to Matthew 24. And I was relieved that when we left Japan, that we left safely and we got onto flights and we reached back to our own country. And very soon after that, we came back. About a day or two after that, there was another earthquake in Japan, an earthquake in California, another in Venezuela and the Philippines. So that proves and verifies the fact that there will be an increase in earthquakes, as prophesied by Christ in Matthew 24. And the one in Venezuela was terrible. It's actually stands out. The Japanese one hasn't been that big, but it's due, according to prophecy, for a very big earthquake or earthquakes. And you probably will see it in the coming days, months, or even probably, I would say, not more than a year from now. And the visions have been seen, the dreams have been had about this earthquakes and that Japan is going to be hit. Now, the one person that prophesied says that it's actually God's anger at the paganism that's taking place in that country. Now, I did say initially at the beginning of this video that there's this anomaly that a non-Christian country that would not have so-called Christian values is actually exercising Christian values without actually being Christian in nature or belief. So coming back to that point, everywhere in Japan, and tourists know this, when they visit, there's several places where there's temples, the temples, and you see the Japanese are devout at their temples, etc. They go and pray, etc. But it's said that it's questionable if they are worshipping the same God. The God, the Almighty. It's questionable, and the point is made by this person that because of paganism and the worshipping of pagan gods, God is angry, and God's going to exercise judgment on that country, and the judgment is in the form of earthquakes, tsunamis, and hurricanes. And by the way, there was a terrible hurricane also post the time that we left Japan, where there was great flooding and so forth and damage. So watch this point, watch this spot. Things are happening in the world. Prophecy is being fulfilled. I'm in the game of sharing about the prophetic. If you look at my videos in my video channel, you'll see that several videos relate to prophecy. So people are being warned, and I'll leave it there. Just to say, be blessed, stay safe, and stay well, and have a great day further.